Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody.
Sorry.
Good afternoon, Michael.
Hey.
We're just going to wait to see if anyone jumps on. And I might repeat myself a couple of times. But this is I think it's the fourth and final Facebook Live for Casper's Autism Awareness Week series. And what we've been doing is we've been informally interviewing some incredible people who themselves experience autism in one way or another. And by that, what I mean is that we've had, the true voice of autistic people on here. And we've also had some siblings. We had the wonderful Jade and Cassie, who have lived with autistic brothers and sisters. And we also had a parent of an autistic child on, Miranda, who's also a Casper staff. And today we have amazing, wonderful, I think he's actually that way, Michael Vermeersch, who I met probably, was it 2000? It might have been 2015, 2017?
I can find back.
I can't remember, but we were honoured to be shortlisted as a charity for a National Diversity Award in Liverpool. You're going to tell me, is it 2015?
Sorry, I was.
Oh no, I thought you were going to tell me that.
I'm picking it out. Go for it. I'll interrupt you when I find it.
Okay, and we went up to Liverpool, and we were shortlisted out of about 20,000 organisations, which was a great honour within the community organisation disability category. And Michael was working for Microsoft, and Microsoft have quite a big involvement with the National Diversity Awards. And I don't even remember the moment that we met, but as soon as we met Michael, we were like, we started chatting, and then we went partying together. We convinced him to get on the party bus, and we've stayed in contact ever since. And Michael has invited me up to, and some of our young people, and been involved in a project that we did a couple of years ago, where I went up to Reading to the Microsoft head office and did some work around inclusion. So we thought Michael would be an ideal human being to have on here to talk about his journey with autism. He's not as young as some of our young people at Casper, but he's still very young at heart, and a very wise and lovely man that we thought you'd all enjoy hearing from. So, Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
It was 2016. There you are.
Oh, 2016.
So, well, I mean, can we hire you for future introductions? I mean, I don't think I need to do anything else now. You already said my name. You already said where I work from. So work for, I think, the employer.
So I actually said you were working for Microsoft, although I know you
still am. I thought. So what do I do there? My focus is on digital inclusion and just making sure that our mission statement is to, this is really bad. What is our mission statement? Our mission statement is to empower every person and every organization on the planet. Now, the keywords for me are there every. So it's then to make sure that whatever we do is fully inclusive for everybody, not 50% of the population, but 100%, not 80% of the population, but 100%. So including people with disabilities and so on. So that's my focus work-wise. I'm also the chair of the Employee Resource Group for Employees with Disabilities in the UK. And just in case, I'm a white male, still, of a certain age, but not too old. And I come from Belgium originally. English is only my third language. And I'm wearing a purple shirt for the moment.
Nice.
My hair is kind of, my parents say my hair is gray, but other people are saying it just looks right. A nice blend of gray and black. There you are.
It is indeed a nice blend of whatever colours may be in there. Okay, thank you, Michael. I think there may be some questions for you at some point around later life, autism, and you're obviously a really good role model. I think you are one of those people that our parents would look at. When I say our parents, I mean the Casper parents who have autistic children now would look at and think, oh, I hope that my child has a successful life like Michael, as in has employment. You don't have to talk about your personal life, but I think you're married and you are living what would be seen as, you're achieving in life, which is obviously really positive.
That's not a question yet, isn't it? Or I comment on that if you want to.
Yeah, go on.
I mean, it is kind of interesting, and I think maybe parents need to reflect a bit on some of those questions. 2 years ago, I had a lady. I was walking in the atrium with a lady, and she knew I was autistic, and she looked at my left hand because she said, "You're married." She looked at my ring finger, but she said it in such a way which was a bit, okay, yeah. What were you planning to do? Because you suddenly expressed such surprise. And she said, "Is that?" I didn't know how to handle it really. And she said, "Well, you found somebody." And I said, "Yes, that's what happened." And then she said, "So there is hope." And I said, "Well, could you go a little bit further here? Because I don't know. I mean, yeah, that sounds kind of hopeful."
Also potentially a little bit insulting. What is she saying?
Well, so she had a child with autism, autistic. We can talk about language and preference a little bit later on. And she said, "Well, then there's hope for my son." So I didn't know quite how to handle that. I offered them a cup of coffee, as you do, and then try to change subject, because that's one of the strategies I've learned in surprise situations. But it did strike me that sometimes parents can have fears about the future for their children, and sometimes things are just life, right? I know this is not the best advice just yet, but just as a warmer-upper.
Good. So good.
I sometimes maybe we are a little bit too fearful. I come from an age where my parents would both work. My parents stopped going to school at the age of 12. So you can kind of start guessing my age. And they went straight almost into work. When I got born, as soon as I kind of could a little bit taking care of myself, that was right, the age of 5 or 6, my parents were both working and I was left on my own. Today, you would never imagine that. I'm not going to say this is good or bad. Obviously, they made a good judgment call. As I'm still alive, I didn't burn any houses down. I did lock up my parents by accident once. Well, not really by accident. I wanted to go to the fair, and they were taking so much time. So at which point I actually locked them up into the bathroom so they would hurry, which was a bad idea because then I couldn't unlock it anymore. So we got even later to the fair. Anyway, I'm digressing. But we live in different periods, but who's to say what's right or wrong with that, given that, at the end of the day, I'm still here and I do have a career. I did get married, and all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, so as a warmer-upper, carry on.
No, brilliant and beautiful. I think, do you know what, Michael? I don't think you can underestimate the impact for parents now to see somebody like you speaking like that, because obviously we work a lot with parents of very, very young children, and they're just coming to terms with the fact that their child isn't mainstream or isn't necessarily, socially I don't even want to say able, because that's not true. It's just differently abled, right? They just are not the same as the majority of their peers at the moment. So yeah, it's really powerful. So pre-diagnosis, you've already talked about your childhood a little bit, but when you were at school, when you were being educated, did you ever know, or did you feel there was something different about you? Did you feel special? Did you, because when did you get your diagnosis of autism?
So that was in 2016.
Right. So not long ago at all, really.
Official diagnosis, yeah, not long ago. So I mean, we could go before school age, really, because okay, let's go before school age, kindergarten kind of stuff. One day, my parents were. I was sat in the car in the back. My parents were driving. We were going out. And as parents can do, they say, "Look, there's your school." And we're passing by my school. I said, "Okay, yeah, whatever." And I didn't say whatever. And then they said, "Look, there's your classroom." And I said, "No." Yeah, this is your classroom over there. And they pointed out my classroom. I said, "No." I said, "Come on, Michael. So there's my classroom." And they said, "Those are the toilets." So they had, I don't know, schools now these days, but we had the toilets would be outside in the playground because yeah. I said, there's my classroom. No, that Michael, don't be funny. That's the toilets. That's where I spend every day. At which point they kind of asked me, come on, what do you mean? And I said, well, every day you drop me off at school. When you're gone, after I wave you goodbye, they escort me to the toilets and they put me there and I stay there until it's time to leave school. And then, so that's my classroom, I said. Wow. So they grilled me a bit more and then they left that. Turns out, so they then had talks with the school, and turns out that this was happening real every day because I was too disruptive in kindergarten. Wow. And they would lock me up in the toilet. Maybe they gave me some toys. I can't remember. I love playing actually with water and running it and all that kind of stuff. There's something there, luckily.
You obviously had to find something to amuse yourself with.
So that was my kind of part of my kindergarten life. Wow. Because I was too disruptive. And then, of course, you didn't have all those provisions like you had then and there, that like you have today as well. So, and I guess in ways, so if we then move towards ages of 5, 6, yeah, there were special moments which I didn't quite think about. For example, my parents would speak. So my original language, my native language, my mother tongue is Flemish, is like Dutch. Mm-hmm. And they would speak French when they didn't want me to hear what they were saying, listen, like the secret language. Now, after a while, I said to them, I understand you now, right? And it's like, what do you mean? Well, I'm getting all this input in another language, and by now I'm starting to guess what you're saying, and it's starting to be correct. So you've now taught me another language by just speaking another language without teaching me, but I'm continuously being immersed in it. So there were special moments like that. Also, very rapid. Don't forget, I also was often, because my parents went working full-time both, I only had the television to keep me company in the beginning. And those were pretty much black and white movies. And the good thing about black and white movies is that they all follow the same pattern. And I don't know if you remember, but they always follow the same pattern where often you would have some kind of person, a hero, heroine, facing adversity, speaking up, facing adversity, being knocked down, all of those kind of stuff. But in the end, it all turned out well.
Right.
And you would have some variations. Of course, it would either be a cowboy, would be a fool, a king's fool. Danny Kaye springs to mind, a king's fool, and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, everything worked out well.
Yeah.
But meanwhile,
like a set narrative of each one. Yeah.
Lots of adversity. So I got from those movies that was life. Life is you stand up for yourself, and you will get knocked down, you will get beaten up consistently, but then all will be okay in the end. So that, taking that forward throughout up to the age of 12, when I would get to school, my parents thought there was something wrong with me because I would always come back covered in blood and my nose would bleed very easily. But basically, I was just continuously beaten up. But I didn't say anything about it because, again, I was like, I'm living the movies, so it must be right. It must be okay. I will turn out okay.
Wow. How interesting. That is so interesting, isn't it? Because I guess actually that's the kind of grounding that we're giving to all of our children now, but we're doing it in a much more kind of formalized way. Like they need to know this and they need to know that. But you kind of by osmosis just took it on. That is just so interesting. So as a child, do you believe that your autism helped you to, for example, understand the language that your mum and dad were speaking and gave you that kind of insight into life? Do you think it was just a normal thing that any child could have had the similar experience, or do you think that your neurodiversity gave you an edge in some way?
To be fair, obviously everybody is different, right? So I wouldn't possibly be able to comment for every child, every autistic child. But there are a couple of elements that I see here is that I had full control of my environment most of the time at home because I was alone.
Yeah.
I would define what I eat. I would define when I eat, when I ate. At some point, I loved books. You would give me a book, and that was it. I would be, in my element.
Yeah, immersed in that. Yeah.
When I discovered sci-fi and fantasy, again at a very young age, that would be my world I would live in. Together with, so in ways I have been brought up by fantasy books, sci-fi books, and black and white television, and that in itself brought then teachings, because I would, when my parents would come home, I would tell them the TV magazine what was going to play in the next couple of hours on which channel, because I would have learned that.
Read it.
Because I know what I want to see next.
Yeah.
So more control than probably any other given child, which means at home, which meant I probably had less mismatches, which meant I probably faced less barriers. On sense, going to school, situations were very differently. As I explained, for example, kindergarten, I would be able to calculate very fast as well. So I would have my own ways of calculating things, which were totally beyond what they're trying to educate you. And teachers would call my parents, and they would say, "We don't like the way he calculates." And when they said, "Is it correct?" "Yes, it is." I said, "No, yes, it is."
Just not the right way.
It's not the right way. It's not the way we're teaching kids.
Wow.
So I would face those kind of barriers at the same time because I read a lot. If they would talk about, what's the biggest river in, and I would shout it out because I knew. I would get home so much with punishments. It's with like speaking out because I wouldn't be quiet. I wouldn't follow the rules. I'm also dyspraxic, so, and I don't know sometimes whether autism or dyspraxic where it goes. My handwriting would be atrocious. My mum would sit until 9 o'clock in the evening to make nice handwriting and correct handwriting. And bless her, I would still be writing my tests in a way that I would get teachers say, "Well, it looked like you did really well, but your handwriting was so atrocious, so we just deducted all the points off for that, so you failed.
Oh, that really does ring a bell, Michael. My son's like that. My 12-year-old son, he cannot write. He just cannot write, but his brain is brilliant.
So you had all these kind of adversities where, on the other hand, you would, really not have them, if that makes sense. So the system wasn't necessarily great for me because I wasn't a sausage and the sausage making machine
in the factory. Yeah. Michael, you have just used the language that I use to describe the process of putting my third child through school, mainstream school. I always say to parents, look, I just squeezed him through like a sausage. Every day was painful, but primary school, I just squeezed him. I decided not to homeschool him, right? So I've chosen to keep him in mainstream education because he's academically capable. And I just squeezed him through like a sausage. And that is how I feel the mainstream education system often feels to neurodiverse.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that has carried on in further education. I mean, the one time I genuinely lit up at school was I changed school, and a teacher noticed that I knew so much more than all the other pupils. And of course, he then had a choice, right? He could have done like all the other teachers. But what he said, he made me his school assistant, his class assistant. And yes, I got more work because I started doing homework of other pupils. At the age of 11, you start doing homework of other pupils. You would be the assistant teacher. But I thrived because I could share my knowledge. I would help them out. And all of that kind of stuff. And I was even more capable of exercising my skill set. And the teacher, he just thought it was fantastic as well, because actually he had a helper in the classroom. Focus on the strengths. So focus on what people can do. Don't focus on what people can't do. Can't sit quiet. Can't be quiet. Can't respect rules. Why are the rules there?
Yeah. It doesn't make sense, that rule. So why am I following it? Yeah. That is
so is that a bit of an answer to that question there?
Yeah. It's so insightful, Mike. It's so incredible to hear the story. I think maybe you should write a book. I don't know if have you ever started to write your...
Somebody is writing a chapter in a book. So it'll be out in a couple of months about my life. So I'm in a book of neurodiverse individuals, apparently.
Brilliant. I'll tell you about it. Yeah. We can share it on social media, etc. I'm just writing your words, a couple of your words of wisdom in the chat so that people can see it visually. So focus on the positives, not what the child can't do. And that is it, isn't it? That is what we do at Casper. That is what we strive to do for all of our young people, is to really celebrate what people can do. It just doesn't make any sense to me not to be like that, but I guess that's just the way that I am.
Let's go to that fish thing from Einstein, all of that kind of stuff, right? Here's a tree. We're going to test on how fast you can climb the tree.
Yeah, no, completely. And I don't know what you feel. I don't know if you have children.
Yes.
So I don't know if you feel this, but I do feel like the education system maybe is more like that now than before, because there's just so many children in the class, right?
Yes. I was just about to say that.
Part of the problem is just that they can't spend the time. They can't learn how every child learns. They can't truly look at the children as individual. And if the child is being a pain in the backside, which is what it kind of presents to be, right? In terms of that, like you say, shouting over everyone else, talking when it's not appropriate, can't sit still, jumping up and down, can't necessarily write like in nice, neat little handwriting, then that is a big problem for a teacher with 34 children in the class.
Yeah, absolutely. And but I mean, going then back to some teachers, you then see what they did and what worked and what some did that didn't work. And I think on that sense, we probably need, and not blaming the teachers. So another part. So at one point during the education, they do those educational psychology tests and all that kind of stuff. So it's so all knowing that, I could calculate very fast. I had an extraordinary encyclopedic knowledge because I just was special interests. So all of those features, speaking multiple languages. I taught myself German at the age of 9. So that was my 4th language then, because I already knew English because of Star Trek, because I fell off.
Oh, we had this debate in one of our groups last night, Star Trek versus Star Wars.
We'll get to that. So where the education psychologist said to my parents, don't bother with your son because he will never get anywhere.
Wow.
So, and this was based on their tests. So how did I get there?
What sort of tests were these that they?
Well, actually, to be fair, knowing back now, it's almost the questions of that you typically would identify somebody with autism. I find. I said,
okay.
Do you feel, do you feel anxious about doing this and this and this? Yeah.
Also, the pure honesty of the autistic child.
Yeah. All of those kind of things, right? Do you like being communicating with your friends, blah blah? No, I'll get beaten up.
He's not looking me in the eyes. Yeah.
All of those kind of.
Tick.
And so, based on that, they're like, how do you feel about going to school? Well, whatever question, like, well, I like the learning bit, but I don't like the teasing bit, the beaten up bit, the fact that I will get punished again. All of those. Of course I don't. So based on all of that, they came to those conclusions. But at the end of the day, they could have just asked, oh, well, there you are, autistic. But at the end of the day, he's doing fairly well. Thank you very much. So there is that kind of, anyway, but to parents, my mum wasn't a person who would who accepted a no. And she just didn't accept that. And to the other thing of my parents, and you got something there as well, Helen, I know you said that at some point, they never lowered the bar. If I came home with a 9 out of 10, they said, why did you not get 10? Why did you not get a 10? What happened? And, I could say because of that, violence playing, I had a bad youth. But no, parents always pushed me to my capabilities, what I could do.
I think it's so hard when everybody around you is telling you there's something wrong with your child. And there isn't the right, like for a child like you were, who's intelligent, totally capable academically, but who is presenting with potentially challenging behaviour, or is slightly odd and then gets bullied and has emotional stuff going on there. I think it can feel quite easy to think, oh, no, there's something wrong with them, and go down that path instead of actually pushing back and saying, there is nothing wrong. And I do sometimes sit with head teachers when I'm either representing a CASPA child or even my own child and say, look, you spend all this time and money on children whose parents haven't read to them every night and trying to close the academic gaps. You're trying to close the academic. This child can get you top grades. Like, just put the time and the effort, the same time and effort into truly understanding them and giving them an environment where they really will thrive and supporting them. They'll get you the grades like that. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. You spend hours with the ones who can't read properly, but what about the ones who need something different? It feels like it's too difficult sometimes for them to think of it in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe there just needs to, and I know it's tough, right? Because I've done also teacher training as a postgraduate thing, and the guidelines there were, some of the guidelines were a little bit atrocious, where they're like, you don't want any weaker or different pupils in your classroom because they will pull down the classroom. Now, so if you get taught that,
it's like conditioning.
You're already like, oh, that's one of those then, because I learned about this. So, and I think that's where probably we need to equip our teachers, but then also our employers, our managers, better on how to get the best out of their classroom and how to get the best out of their teams, etc.
Totally. So moving forward then throughout your youth, and then, you know, early kind of 20s or whatever, how did you ever look around, and did you meet anyone who was autistic, or when did it start to occur to you that you might have autism, or was it a part of
I'm going to go back a little bit, and so in school, where still in younger school, I only had one friend. Now looking back, that friend was the naughty person. It was the naughty person. That was the person who never could sit still on his chair, would do naughty things, totally run away, all of that kind of stuff, but would play football, would be the best at football, all called sports and things like that. Looking back, I think that was a person with ADHD.
I was going to say the same, yeah.
And that was my best friend, because what would happen is that I would learn the rules about football, be a referee, and he would be able to play football matches and all that kind of stuff, which was properly refereed. So we would just nicely complement each other. So I think that could have been a clue, but I didn't know then. Going further, obviously extraordinary behavior, like so I got very rapidly into chess as well. Started at the age of 12, teaching chess up to adult age people. So all of those extraordinary things could have been some kind of clues sometimes. But I think the first clues were, at one point, was I had a girlfriend who was studying psychology, and when we got into arguments and getting more to the end of the relationship, she said, "You know, you're autistic." She didn't say it with a nice voice, I have to say.
She didn't mean it as a compliment then.
But it was, well, what? And she did throw in all the things she learned.
Wow, okay.
as a third year psychologist student. But that could have been a clue, then a more clear.
Well, that was a kind of informal diagnosis, no?
Yes, absolutely. And I didn't pay her even. Well, so I think that was the very first time that I had that words brought to me. I think when was Rain Man? When was Rain Man? Rain Man didn't do anything good.
89 or something, do you think? Maybe something like
88. So
I wasn't too far off.
Yeah, that was then still after. So I'm just trying to see to put it in. So
Rain Man really was when autism started to come to the general public awareness in a way. And that sounds awful because lots of people before that were autistic. But really, in terms of mainstreaming it as a concept, as a label, as a kind of way that people's brains are wired, that was definitely a turning point, wasn't it, for people? Like, oh, I know someone like.
And it didn't necessarily do any good, right? Because it kind of painted a specific picture, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Very,
which a lot of autistic people now do tell us, that people say to them things like, "Oh, you're not like Rain Man," or "Oh, can you remember the whole of the yellow page, the phone book or whatever, like Rain Man?" And you're right, it has blighted it in a way, because everyone just sees that as a typical autistic person, when there's no such thing, right?
No, absolutely. This is just my own view. What I do see is that when you look at the so there's two views. When you look at the spectrum, I can see where there are similarities across the neurodiversity spectrum overall, and you can then see where, because of the barriers, what pressures it bring to the individual because of the barriers that they face, I feel. But where I want to go with this is this thing which I've seen more recently, is that concept of a spiky profile.
Yeah.
So when you look at the whole spectrum, is that we're in a neuro minority because of our spikes, and spikes go up and spikes go down, right? There's things we're really good at. There's things that we're not so good at. Whereas the rest of the neuro majority is kind of an average across it. No, I'm not. I just did not say that we're all a little bit autistic. Totally not. We are not. Don't go there. But if you look at a series of capabilities, cognitive capabilities, the neuro majority will be average across, and the people who face the barriers, who face a world which hasn't been designed for them, as the people with the spikes. And that also means the people with the spikes, we should say, like, well, that's really a gift. Also that, because being genuinely, what you could call a positive spike can also be held against you. It can also be a problem. I mean, being a know-it-all, because you absorb all the knowledge and you want to share that because you it looks really exciting.
Yeah, right? And it's all in here. It's like you've got to, and that's true. Obviously, we know we have hundreds of young people that have come through Casper, and some of them have a very intense knowledge about a particular subject or a very intense interest. And sometimes we have had to. Interestingly, you mentioned earlier something about strategies you have learned, and we have to kind of work with each other to say, you have asked me that question 7 times, or you have told me that 7 times. 3 times is probably enough. Like, and actually kind of train somebody to maybe hold some of that in. And that sounds really awful. I don't mean train. We all have to be trained in something or the other. But yeah, that is really interesting, because I've seen that actually what you just described as like the peaks, as you know, on a sound desk, where you've got all the things and they move up and down. So you've got like the bass and the treble and the volume, the different bits. I've seen it described like that, so that like the different parts go up and like, so there's a baseline, but also those peaks in certain skill characteristics.
And even when you go a social event, you go to a social event, and there's an element there, you don't know what's going to happen, and that could be quite working on your anxiety. You don't know what's going to happen. So what you do, you create possibly a facade. You will talk about the things that passion you, that you know about, because that is that control, and there's also that facade, so you don't have to worry too much, right?
Yeah.
So if that happens not to be football, just picking on football here, if that happens not to be football, but let's say racing cars, people, and you how are you? And you start, well, yeah, good. And you drive the conversation. Well, really good now, because yesterday I saw this racing car, and you drive the conversation
to your comfort zone. Yeah.
And you do that consistently. And people are like, he's a bit odd, isn't he?
How do you feel about that, Michael? Can I just stop you? How do you feel about that? He's a bit odd, isn't he? How do you feel about that?
So I'm struggling a little bit, because I need to interpret what you want to ask with that. I know that happens, and I know that happens when you that happens, that creates extra bias against you, be it academically, but also in employment. When at the end of the day, well, when do you get promoted? Well, there is an element of playing the game. There's an element of liking the people who are like you. All of that in play is real, is happening. And if you have that culture who doesn't accept that, it's who doesn't accept diversity, you will have that. And then well, if you have to promote a person, and our quota is 5 per year, that one is a bit odd, isn't it? Maybe we want to go for caffeine, right? Because they're not
the one who fits in a bit better or whatever.
So that is kind of happening. But if you then turn it around, when you get to a culture where they're saying, actually, having that different perspective can give us an edge in the way we do things, and that goes for the full spectrum of neurodiversity. I had chats with manager who was managing researchers, and I had this one lady with ADHD, and like, she's sometimes really energetic, and then I don't get anything out of her, you would say. And actually, she's really energetic when she could do the research, but then presenting back and writing the paper wasn't really her thing. She was really excited more on that. And I said, well, you know what? You could offload from the rest of your team some of that work and let her do that. And then, then they could just carry on with what they do best.
Yeah, so you get the absolute best out of her without her expecting her to also squeeze out the bit that actually she's not that good at, she doesn't really want to do.
And she will never get good at, right? Because think about the fish and the climbing tree, right? There's nothing wrong with her. That's just how she is. She got a spike profile. Sorry, you didn't hire a clone this time.
Or somebody, or you didn't actually, what I love this is you didn't actually hire someone who will just sort of go along with it because they think they should. Do you know what I mean? People just do things at work and it makes their life drudgery, and they're like, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do this reporting, and but actually you might be rubbish at reporting, but you're incredible with human beings.
Absolutely.
As in, you need to carve out those roles or get the team together. Sarah actually just put, I know this Casper is Sarah watching, even though she's not on here, but she says, yes, play into people's strengths. It's true inclusion.
There's I hate this. I know we're going in all kinds of direction, but hopefully it's a little bit exciting.
And I have to apologize, Michael. That is also me. I'm an all into all direction person. So I'm the best person to interview you.
So there was this program by this brilliant chef. It was Michel Roux, I think. Yeah. And there was a person, an autistic person there. We still haven't covered whether on language, first person, identity first or but anyway, we can always do that. But there was this person there, and going a little bit back, the number of times I hear, oh, autistic, so therefore not good with people. That's utter rubbish, right? Because so in this program, they had this autistic young person, younger than me, therefore young person, who they would put in the front line serving the customers. And he was excellent because he knew exactly how to serve a plate of this exactly. And I had that at time. I remember that when I was younger, when I was doing extra jobs, they would see the silhouette coming of my customer, and I would know you want a coffee with a biscuit, and this is how you want your coffee. And that would already be ready. And I'd say, the usual, sir. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
And those aspects, maybe you shouldn't have gone into discussing on who won the football game, and I would suck at that as a technical term for you, but for the rest I would know exactly what you would like. The same thing with customers. If I would spend the time with customers, at some point we'd say, like, it's your wedding anniversary, right? Tomorrow you need to buy some flowers. And the best flowers would be from there for the moment, because we got a special going on. And they would look at me like, how did you know? Like, I've been working for you with more than a year. Of course I know.
You mentioned it last year, and I remember. Incredible. Honestly, I know that I'm neurodiverse. I've never, ever had any kind of diagnosis or even any assessments, because I was that child at school that just got on, just heads down, was nervous as hell, anxious about everything, just got on and did everything right, because that was part of what I had to do. I was just a good girl, right? So I never came above the radar and anything else, but I know that my brain does work differently to the mainstream. But I love working with autistic people. Like the first time I met the young people at Casper nearly 18 years ago, I just looked at them, I was like, I am home with you guys. And I don't understand why there's so much pain. Why is there so much pain and anguish amongst this group of people? Because why are they so isolated? It's just not okay. And that's what made me leave my theatre job and just go, I want to work, I want to develop this. I know I can make these guys' lives better. Like, this is not all right. Like, I can be the bridge, you know. Recently we've had some funding from the local authority to do a project which we've called Casper Connects. And it's for over 18s. And I don't know if you've seen anything about it, but it's our Discord project. So it's built on a Discord server.
Okay.
And we had this brainwave basically to, for the first time, really put our money where our mouth is and employ a whole team of 7 autistic people to work on it. So some of them are our young people that have come through Casper over the last 15 years and are now adults, and some we've met elsewhere. And it has just been the best thing that we've done. During lockdown, I would say that's one of the most incredible things that's happened, is we've managed to put together a truly fully autistic team to drive forward that project.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and you get those sparks, you get those out of the box thinking,
and precision.
Yeah, all of that. I mean, I haven't done any research in this, and I have to be careful saying something like this, but I'm just going to say it now. I do wonder whether all these remarkable people throughout history, I'm not saying I'm not going to diagnose them. We need to stay away. But I do wonder. Also the people who sometimes got accused of being a witch, or because women as well, got to be accused of being a witch, of magician. That that those were the people who were passionate, who were different, knowing all the herbs, for example, knowing those what those things would do, and spending time in the woods, picking the herbs and all of that kind of stuff. And then people who not understanding saying, oh, you must be something special, so therefore you must be evil.
Yeah, but there is still elements of that, right? And that's where there's still struggle. That he's a bit odd, it's turned into he's a bit odd. But what that then does translate into, like you say, is the barriers that stop, that keep the statistics where they are in terms of autistic people not being in work. I mean, that is just the most horrendous figure you can imagine. Like 86% of autistic people in the UK not being in a full-time employment. And it's like, what? Why? And it's purely because of that similar strand of, we don't understand this and we're afraid of it.
Well,
it's so we're just going to push it away.
Sausage factory, right? Because at one point, I don't know, in the 60s or the 70s, they started, right, how do you recruit people? Oh, well, we make them write something. Okay, that's a good one. And then, well, make them write something. It has to be look a bit. So how does it need to look like? And that whole process, and I'm like, oh, good job. But actually, that good job was based on averages. So basically, what everybody's hiring is people who write now excellent CVs. You got flipping AI doing this now for you if you want to. So, but you don't necessarily getting people who are excellent at the job, or who can give that extra boost to your industry.
No, it's totally true. So we only have, do you know what, Michael? We've now nearly done an hour of talking.
No, we're not finished.
We only have about 10 minutes. We need to finish at 3. So I have some other thoughts. I just wanted to ask you a few things, but you may also have some other things that you feel really important to say, both to autistic children, young people, and other autistic adults and parents. But I just wanted to kind of know from you within that. I'd rather, pass the floor over to you to talk a bit more, but I would like to know kind of what support do you think is really important? Like, what support did you get that was important? What, kind of almost like advice or guidance for people, if you have any.
So I think that changes, obviously, depending on the circumstances. Things that have really made a difference, actually, if I now unprepared kind of look at that, the moments I thrived were the moments that people looked at what I could do rather than what I can't do. And I can say that throughout my life, whether I was, 6, 9, 12, 20, 21, and now 26. That's a joke. So you need to laugh harder with that one.
Sorry. You look so young.
So that's one thing. The second thing is, and this is a tricky and a tough one. People don't know, and in general, people are nice, and in general, people want to help, but they can't read minds. So if you are, and I know it's not easy, you might need some practice with it, build up some courage with it, but self-advocacy has helped a lot with me, but I had to learn that as well.
How do you learn that? Because I think obviously a lot of people that come to Casper, we are all about autism pride. We're all about the positives and making, really focusing on what you can do, not what you can't do. But if you're an autistic young person or adult, how do you get to a point where you feel you can advocate for yourself? If you don't, for example, have somewhere like Casper, how do you do that by yourself?
Yeah, I think the self-esteem is really key, and we don't get it. We're getting a lot of knockbacks. Self-esteem is really key, and building that self-esteem. One of the ways I've learned that, because I also had, when I was younger, I wouldn't say it was a stutter, but it came out like that, because basically what happened was everything would be building up, and I wanted to roll out, and it wouldn't go out because it's an executive function thing, and then I would get more nervous, I would get really red and all that kind of stuff, and I had to overcome that with public speaking courses and all that kind of stuff. And it's still sometimes there that it's not flowing, and it's not flowing the way I want it to flow. But anyway, so that self-esteem. So when the moments I've been really unsure, I kind of look back to, right, what have I done? What have I done over the years? And take all those nuggets of goodness and kind of zoom in on them and kind of put them in a bag. And I was like, and ignore the beating up and all what other people say is with all and all that kind of stuff. Like, I've done this. I've done this on my own. I realized that. I've written a paper. I've done that painting, and take all those successes.
Nice. Yeah.
And harness that. Or even this one helped me. I've never been in that situation before until I came into that situation, and I still thrived, or I still came out of it, and nobody got hurt or whatever. It still was a success, because at any given point, tomorrow might be a new day, right? And I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and that's really scary. But I've done many days like that. So harnessing those moments and bringing that in my mindset, that has really helped me. Now, going then to that self-efficacy, that then feels like I got the self-esteem and the right to actually say, you know what? If you do this, I'll do so much better for you. If you give me an agenda of what you expect, you'll get more out of me. Now, that's the first step of self-advocacy. The second step is, bless people. Neurotypical people do need a little bit convincing. If you can get the courage on, and this is why I need this. You can then say, and by the way, I'm autistic and I could really do with that, but you'll get so much more better out of me. And then we're like, oh, of course. I've been in situations where I sat at tables at company conferences, and everybody around me like, oh my God, what's next? Oh my God, is this going to be the whole day until we finally get the dinner? And I was like, oh, what's next? I'll tell you what's next. And I took out my paper. I was like, how did you get that? How did you get an agenda of the day? I said, I asked for it. I was like, I wish we had that. So
didn't think of it. That's such advice. That is such good advice. I wonder, do you know what, Michael? We are going to have to end in about 3 minutes. I have to go somewhere and I have to leave at 3. But I would wonder if you would be happy to come and do a talk with some of our autistic, adults that are moving into adulthood. So our 18 plus. I think some of your insights and some of your guidance, some of your thoughts are just absolutely brilliant for them. Like, it's interesting, this whole, be clear. Self-advocacy is something I think we need to take on as a concept. I think that's really important.
So just quickly, so for example, I had a lady in our office and she was amazing, but she often would dye her hair and it would be a different color. Now, there's a term for that, but I would each time I'd say, it's the same lady. It's the same lady, Michael. Hey, how are you? Because she would be completely different person. My manager, when she would have a cold, I would say, each time you now speak, I will have to tell my brain this is still the same person, because your voice sounds different. Just know I will be a little bit slower because you're having a cold for the moment and reaction time. I said, and I could just say that. And she said, yeah, that's fine.
I love that. I love the fact that you're in an environment where you can do that. And that's where it's not just the, the responsibility of the autistic person. It's the responsibility of everybody around to just make it okay for people to say that they need.
And any other person could say he's a bit odd. No, at this point, okay, thanks for telling me that. I now know.
Yeah, cheers. But also, it's brilliant because it also brings people along. And this is what happened. We had somebody called Dan who works on our Discord program now, and he said, I work like this. I need things very clearly written in an email, blah, 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 blah. And I just said to Chloe, who I was interviewing him with before, we were like, if only everybody was like that, then it would be so much easier to structure everything, manage everybody, and everybody would get what they need. Like, it was brilliant. He just came in, he's autistic, just said exactly what he needed. And we were just like, oh, how much easier is this than just everybody kind of pretending they're okay and just kind of hiding it and thinking, oh no, they might think badly of me if I show a weakness or a difference or whatever. Oh, I didn't know this interview was going to go in that direction, Michael, but that is beautiful.
But this is where, again, diversity can help as well, and that view of those minorities, because ultimately, when you get it right for them, you will get it right for everybody. And that's why you need more of those different thinkers rather than clones. Sorry, I shouldn't say that.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm just writing that in the chat as our final word for today, but I'm going to get you back on another time. When you get it right for minority groups, you get it right for. What a brilliant thing.
Because nobody ever is her or his average at any given point. Because guess what? Even average people have ups and downs. Things could have happened. They could have had a bad day at work. Kid could just have fallen over with a bike, and and meanwhile you need to do this paper, and that they're currently being looked at by the doctor. Nobody is average.
No, and then the next minute they might do something amazing that saves someone's life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Michael, I'm going to give you the last word if you would like it, but I cannot tell you how much I love you. I think you are so magnificent. I'm so proud to have met you, and I hope that at some point soon we'll be able to party again, maybe in Liverpool, maybe at the National Diversity Awards. But definitely, I'd love you to come and do some more work with us at Casper if you can.
Serendipity. There you are. That's my life. If I could start with a book, that's the title.
Ah, nice. Yes. Brilliant. Good. Thank you so much for coming on, Michael. We massively appreciate it. And I'm 100% sure I'm going to get lots of messages just to say how, you know, insightful what you were saying was and how useful.
Okie dokie.
Thank you. Sarah says, a true supporter of Casper. Thank you.
Oh, that's...
Bye. Right. Have a lovely weekend. Have a lovely Easter.
You too, bye.
I'll see you very soon.
I don't know where the button is to go away. Oh, there. Leave.